Welcome to the Monday Minute of the Hunts Backcountry podcast. These are shorter and more informal episodes where we answer your listener questions. Joined as usual by Steve. How are you, man?
Good. Yeah. Another fun weekend, kind of wrapping up summer here. Took the kids camping and fishing and just
Nice.
letting them we were just talking previously about just letting kids be kids and go explore and
Yeah.
so the kids they were with my nephews who are like I think 10 and 11 now, so they're a little older and they're just, yeah, it was so awesome. They were just packing around bows and arrows and just hunting stuff. And
Yeah.
I just sat back as a parent and just watched. And yeah, it was pretty cool. My little boy's like, he's 4, so he's just bopping along with him, like pretending to shoot. And yeah, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. It feels very like a big transition for sure because I'm leaving for Alaska later this week. I took my son back to school this morning. So now it's very much like in my mind, like summer's over, like get back to school, get some hunting in. Like it's exciting times. It's sad for summer to be over, but so much fun stuff ahead.
Yeah. We even had this kind of that, I think that Hillary storm pushed some like cold weather and rain and stuff up here. So it's like
Hmm.
very fall-esque weather outside right now, rainy, kind of in the 60s. Like it's, yeah, definitely gets the oh man, I wish I was in the Elkwoods right now kind of feeling going.
Yeah, for sure. What is, speaking of just time of year, summer wrapping up, hunts coming soon, what's an update from an EXO standpoint? Because I feel like it's just been a whirlwind of August already. And I feel like August just started, but somehow it's at 20 something today.
First of all, thank you to everybody listening who's purchased a pack. It's been a whirlwind, man. It's like middle of June hit, and it's just like we've been drinking from a fire hose ever since. It's just been freaking crazy. Their sales have been fantastic. So what we're running into right now is our production capabilities can't keep up with demand. So we build up as much inventory as we can with K4. Obviously, we're pretty limited. Just going into it's a new product, but it's starting to dwindle and dwindle fast. Like we're certainly 5 or 6 items are out of stock on the website, and we're kind of, yeah, just all hands on deck, making sure that we keep stuff in stock and also filling orders. I was ended up in the warehouse for 3 of the 5 days last week, just helping ship all day long because that was like the most pressing, you know, thing that could be done. Right, it was just making sure we get orders out the door because it was getting pretty healthy backlog. We try to keep it as short as possible, but it was getting to where it was like, yeah, 4 or 5 days on a couple orders, or more than a couple. So yeah. Anyways, but we made some serious headwind last week and got caught up. And yeah, that's the fun thing about being a small company is it's just everybody jumps in and just does whatever that needs to be done to help out. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's come up more and more recently. I think is like a guy will get on and like last week, for example, for a little bit, we had 3600s out of stock in one of the certain colors, or like a hip belt will be out of stock in a certain color and a certain size. And one thing that has come up more in the last week, I think because of that, is guys asking about, hey, can you mix and match colors and have like a different color bag and frame and lid and stuff like that? And you certainly can. You can piece together a pack system with all the components. The price will come out the same. So if by chance somebody is just wondering about that, and I only bring it up because it's come up a lot recently, it's totally doable. A lot of times it looks really cool doing some color combinations. You can even obviously kind of match or mix accessories in with that and create it. But yeah, if you guys get to looking online, if you have any questions about something that isn't showing in stock, reach out and let us know. And then if you're seeing something and it says add to cart, I mean, that means it's ready to ship. So again, like we're getting questions, guys just get nervous this time of year of like, hey, am I really gonna get this in the next, call it 2 weeks or what have you? And as you just said, Steve, like our lead times, we're getting it down 2 to 4 business days, should be probably going lower. And we can definitely get you guys set up with whatever you need. But if you have any questions or anything, just reach out direct. It's the best way to get an answer from us
Yeah.
is pick up the phone, give us a call, or shoot us an email.
Yeah, one of our going back to being small, like, and the relationship with our with our sew shop is we are incredibly nimble right now. Like Pat, a good portion of his day is just monitoring where we have basically low stock alerts, like, oh, these are going to run out, these are going to run out. And then we're constantly working with the sew shop, like, hey, you need to bump, medium range or hip belts up to the front of the list. And within 10 days, we're going to get them. Right. So if I'd say the best thing to do if something's out of stock, reach out, but also just sign up for the low stock notification email. So just when it's out of stock, right below it, you can sign up for that email and then just pay attention, because certainly within 2 weeks, I don't think there's anything that's going to be out of stock longer than that. It's just a matter of the rifle carriers have been a good example. Like we sold a pile of those things and then they went out of stock, and then we got some in, received them, and they were almost out of stock again. There was such a long list of people that had already signed up for the notification that it went quick. So if you see it, definitely jump on it pretty quick.
All right, enough business. Let's get to some
Yeah,
questions.
get to fun stuff.
Yeah, fun. This is, I think, a fun one. All right, this guy wrote in and said, "Am I taking weight and space savings in my pack too far?" He said he's going on an 8-day elk hunt, and he normally carries like a 56 pack of wet wipes, which is 7 per day for this 8-day hunt. He says that pack of 56 wet wipes weighs 14 and a half ounces, and he realized how much weight that is just because of moisture content. So now he has dehydrated his wet wipes, vacuum sealed them in packs of 14, which one pack should last him for 2 days. And it saved a ton of space and weight in his pack. So he went from like 14 ounces down to a little over an ounce per package. So his total savings doing this for everything is like about 10 ounces for all these little packs that he's dried and sealed. So he's asking, am I crazy? Have I gone too far? I haven't heard of anyone else doing this. So Steve, you're on team wet wipe. Like, you don't do any TP, but you're also a weight weenie. So what are your thoughts on this?
7 wipes a day seems excessive. I don't want to talk about his
let's talk about what food he's packing now.
yeah. A lot of Chipotle or something.
Right, let's go there. Let's go to the TMI. How many wipes a day do you shoot for?
I think 2.
Okay.
Yeah. 2. They're bigger wipes, but yeah. Usually, yeah. That should be good. I want to say, well, let me think about this. So the 10-day hunt last year, my sheep hunt, I packed 2 packages of wet wipes. And I guess I'm lying. I guess I'm 4, because there's 20. I think there's 20 in each package. So that's 40 wipes. So that's 4 per day.
Okay.
And I
that's
felt
exactly
like that was
where I'm at.
That was plenty. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's usually I haven't had any quote unquote issues where I've like had emergency wet wipe situations really that I can remember. So but yeah, I'll do 4 a day, and that's plenty for doing business, and then also leaving me some wet wipes to like just clean up with, wash, do a little wet wipe bath. So I feel that in terms of just doing the duty, for me anyway, like 4 a day has always been plenty.
Yeah. As far as dehydrating them, I think that's pretty smart. I think somebody does that. Ben Reynolds, maybe, when we talked to him, the Alaska sheep hunter guy, somebody dehydrates their wipes. I've heard of it before. I would say when he said 8-day elk hunt, so many guys think, we just had a guy walk in the shop the other day, and I was like in my office, I can hear all the conversations out in the showroom, and he's like, oh, I'm going in for 14 days. And then in my head, I'm like, no, you're not. Because the reality is it's so rare, unless you're in that Alaska type situation where you're really invested, you take a super cub into a certain area. It's so rare that you're not resupplying after day 4, day 5, it's in the elk woods, because you're never getting, with elk, you obviously have this limitation of how far you're going to get from the truck, right? Like, 5 miles, 6 miles. I mean, at some point it's, especially if you're solo, you're not going so far back there that getting to the truck and resupplying isn't, just a couple hour kind of, time commitment. So, when my very first reaction was this guy said 8-day elk hunt, it's like, yeah, you're probably you're probably not actually going to do that. You probably need to pack for like 4 nights, and then you're going to resupply in the middle of that trip. Because if you haven't killed something after 4 nights, 5 days in the field, you're already thinking about, okay, where's plan B? Where am I going next?
Yeah.
Because elk, it's just a different thing. If it's like a deer hunt, I could see like getting in somewhere and camping on a buck and waiting for the right opportunity. And certainly some guys hunt elk that way, but in general, that I just think it's 8 days would be a pretty long hunt to be completely away from the truck and not resupplying. But even let's say it's he is going to do that, or it's a different type of hunt where that's the case. Saving weight and space is everything. So I don't disagree with what he's doing at all. I
Hmm.
think maybe um, doing day 5 through 8, you dehydrate those wipes, and then the first 4 days you're not dehydrating them, because it's like immediately the second you get in the field you got to rehydrate something already. So that seems a little.
Hmm.
What did he say? He did 2 days at a time.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he was taking 14 wipes that he had
Yeah.
dehydrated, vac sealing them, and then
Okay.
he would have say four of those packages. He
Yeah.
would pull those 14 wipes, put them in a Ziploc, add water. So now he has like 14 kind of
Okay.
like in process to be rehydrated.
Yeah, man, that makes. I'm gonna give this a shot. I like this idea.
All right.
Yeah. You should do it
Yeah.
for your sheep hunt and let us know how it goes.
I like what you said, Steve, about and this goes back to, hey, how many do you really need? So like if this guy's freaking out about hearing us talk about only needing 4 per day, and he's really like, man, I really think I need 7 per day. Going back to your point, like maybe the extras, maybe this margin of safety for how many you have total, like those are dehydrated, because you may
Mm,
never need them, right? So I think that
yeah.
that's a great idea of like, hey, I think I'm, call it then like what you said, Steve, and then in the next 4 days, like let me have 14 or 20 that aren't dehydrated or what have you. And like basically when I get to the end of that, whether that's in 2, 3, 4, 5 days, then I have this extra supply that's dehydrated, smaller, lighter, etc. So I kind of like the mixed idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The 2 days at a time makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna have to give it a shot and see. Like, I wonder how much you put them into a Ziploc, and do you add an ounce of water, 2 ounces of water? I guess you could figure out you could just weigh. Same thing I did when I did those first meals is weigh a wipe, your 14 wipes prior to drying them out. And then that tells you how much water you need to put back in to get them to the same place.
Hmm.
Hmm,
Yeah.
cool. New ideas, man. That's exciting.
Yeah. I like the combo approach because part of where my head went to this original question and having everything be dry and then having to rehydrate stuff. Like part of what I didn't like about this idea was we talk a lot about keeping things simple and efficient, right? And when you
Mm-hmm.
create complexity and chores in the backcountry, it's taking away. I know it sounds crazy, but it's taking away from the hunt, right? So if you have to worry about, oh gosh, I need to rehydrate this and do that and have this system and this process, like the less things you have to take care of, the better. So from a simplicity standpoint, I didn't like this whole dry out, repackage. Like it's time on the front end, it's time during the hunt. It's something you have to have some mental capacity to, even though again it's very simple. But I just like to keep things simple. But yeah, this combo approach of like having your reserves dehydrated, I'm liking it.
Yeah. And I'm less, I got food and wipes, probably the only two I could think of, but consumable goods out there, right? That I'm a little less concerned about that, because the pack weight's getting lighter every single day. It's not,
Mm.
if you were taking, your sleeping bag and going from 14 ounces to 1 ounce, I'd be like, all for it, right? Because that's weight you're packing around all the time. But with wipes and food, I tend to, especially on the, if it's not like a crazy long hunt, I just kind of overpack a little bit. Because they are just, again, every day you're dropping a pound and a half of food. And the wipes are, an ounce. So
You're dropping food in a combination of ways since we're talking about food and
yeah,
taking a
and
dump.
pooping.
All right. Well, if you guys never anticipated us nerding out on wet wipes and taking a dump on the podcast, you're welcome for that section right there. All right. Steve, this question came through. Yeah, I thought it was great because I have zero experience. I want to hear from you on it. This guy wrote in and said, I've heard Mark and Steve talk about Kowa spotters when discussing high-end options, along with Swarovski. As I thought about it, I don't recall Kowa coming into discussions when talking about high-end binoculars. Have I just missed their name in the discussions, or has Kowa dropped the ball when it comes to their bino lines? A quick glance online shows that their flagship bino is about $1,400, which is certainly a far cry from Swaro. I've never, that I can recall, looked through any Kowa binos.
Yeah, they have what are they called? Genesis or something like that? It's been so long since I looked. So short answer, they make them. They're just not garbage, but there's better options out there.
Even for the
Um,
money.
yeah, they're like an SLC would have been a Genesis. So the Kowa Genesis binoculars, like an SLC from Swaro would have been better at a similar price point, right? They did discontinue the SLC, so that now you're competing with the ELs. But they are, well, yeah. They just haven't been. Uh, we've reviewed them, we've looked through them, it makes a lot of sense for us to sell them through SNS Archery just because we already sell their spine scopes, but we just don't. We very much like pick and choose what items we want to put on the website, and if it's not an item that essentially at the end of the day we sell what we use and believe in and what we can talk about with, like, hey, we use these, we've compared them to others, these are fantastic, you basically trust us. The cow is a good example of one that we've looked through and go, they're not that great. So the just combination of the glass is good but not outstanding, and ergonomics and features and things like that. Yeah.
So they're decent, just got a lot of better options to recommend.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those examples of, these companies use different factories, and so I think they're the spine scopes are made in a kind of more premium Japan factory, and I could be completely speaking out of line here, but maybe their binos are made in a different factory somewhere else that doesn't quite have the same standards that their spine scopes do. But you know what I mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. We had a speak pipe question come in that I wanted to get some take on about an older pack.
Hey guys, this is Steve Powell from Chardon, Ohio. Been using your pack for probably 5 years now, and I'm thinking about treating it with some Nick Wax water repellent treatment, just to try to keep some of the water beading off in light rain. I was wondering if you had any experience with that, and how I might be able to put some type of treatment on the pack so it's just not a sponge, because it's pretty worn and likes to absorb a lot of water right now. Thanks.
All right, good question. We sometimes get questions about treating packs that are newer, or hey, can I make this thing more waterproof or water resistant as it comes out of the box? I don't really recommend anything there, but Steve, for a 5-year-old pack that's been well used, maybe been through some wash cycles, obviously exposed to a lot of field conditions and things like that, what's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, DWR is a surface coating, durable water repellent finish, and it'll rub off and degrade over time. If you go back and listen to that podcast they did with Marcel from Canis Gear, because rain gear is like the epitome of you want that DWR working, right? And he gave some great tips in there, and I don't think it'd be any different for a pack. I certainly think, after a few years, I'd say the first 2 to 3, depending on how much you're using the pack, it shouldn't, you're not going to lose too much. But after season 5, yeah, certainly grabbing some DWR spray, and there's a ton of different ones. I personally haven't used any myself. I know Nick Wax is a reputable company though, and I'm sure if they have a DWR spray, it'd work just fine. I've used them on tents before. I had an old tent that really lost some of its kind of water resistance, and I've used them on some boots before as well. So I can't remember maybe it's Granger spray.
Yeah, they make one. Granger.
Okay. Yeah, Granger. That's what I've got. I've used that. Actually, I used that on my boots, and then some Prana Zions I had when we went into the Frank Church Death Hike in the Snow. I like right a week before I sprayed those pants. And man, that was pretty impressive. Like my pants never actually saturated through. The only thing I noticed was a very distinct odor to it, right? Like it had a chemical kind of rubbery type smell that I think basically was on there until like a couple washings later, right? And then at that point, you probably washed off the stuff. So, anyways, it certainly, I don't think it's a bad idea. Maybe if you're a bow hunter, I'd pay attention to the reviews and see which ones leave more or less of less of an odor behind. But they work. And if you're hunting in a really wet climate, it's certainly a good idea. It'd be interesting to remember in the podcast with Marcel, he talked about the best thing you can do is put your rain jacket in the dryer on a not high heat, but heat. Mm-hmm. And because that realign the fibers. I should have to like try that on an old pack, like wash it good and then throw it in just throw the bag in the dryer, right? You're not going to throw the frame. I won't even mess with the hip belt and harness, because certainly not the hip belt and harness, because the heat with the foam would not be a good combination. The foam's going to shrink. But it'd be interesting to see if you just threw a bag in there, threw a couple like, towels in it so the buckles aren't just clanking all over the inside of the dryer wall, and see if that does anything.
And I was going to say on that point about the heat, but also just make sure it's clean before you do the application of the DWR. Because obviously you want to get any soiled debris and all that stuff out of the fabric, so that when you are adding this treatment, you're treating the fabric and not, a layer of film and dust and dirt and all that junk. So yeah, I will link to that podcast too. I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve. That was a fantastic podcast. I would actually like to go back and listen to, because there's so much information in it. I looked it up. It's episode 345. It's called How Rain Gear Works and Why Sometimes It Doesn't. Again, I'll leave a link to that in the show description as well. But when you mentioned Marcel and Canis and rain gear and DWR, if you want to nerd out on any of that stuff, that's a great podcast to go listen to. All right, let's hit one more. This question also came through via SpeakPipe about hunting solo for elk.
Hey guys, this is Tad here in Illinois. I had a question about calling and hunting elk solo. Pre-rut, I guess mostly, but could go into the rut as well. Have either of you ever used a decoy in your solo calling setups, or what are some strategies you use when calling by yourself, and some setups that have worked in the past? Thanks again. Appreciate what you do. Bye.
All right. That's a great question. We just recently did a Monday Minute episode, actually just last week, with Corey Jacobson. And we talked a lot about some things that would help this guy out on this question in particular, because one of the questions we answered on that podcast, which was also from a listener, had to do with this listener sharing his story of hunting elk solo. And he, in the last 6 years, has gotten more and more confident, a better caller, having more encounters. He was talking about he was finding elk better, but he was just struggling to seal the deal with that last little bit of being in bow range and creating a shot opportunity. And decoys came up in that briefly. But I just want to say that previous conversation, the previous Monday Minute with Corey Jacobson, to address this question in particular, not only about decoys, but just about hunting elk solo and creating shot opportunities. There's a lot in there to pull from. So definitely want to point people to that if they didn't hear it already. But Steve, what's your thoughts about decoys in particular for someone who's hunting elk solo?
Yeah, as a general, like if you have, say you're hunting with a group of 3 guys, you got a caller, a shooter, and an extra guy, I think there's nothing but good can come from having that third guy pack a decoy, where he could kind of run, like get in between, be next to the caller and help pull an elk by you. We used to pack the Montana decoys. I think I used like the cow butt one, and I packed it around for, I'd say like 3 to 4 years, not on every hunt, but most hunts. And it did nothing but help. It's just, especially from a solo perspective, that same time we were filming our hunts, and it was like a cameraman. I was trying to, like, you're trying to be caller, cameraman, and run a decoy. It was just too much. Right. And from a solo perspective, like those, at least that Montana decoy, man, that's tough. It's like you're got your bow in one hand, your decoy in one hand, because it's never that perfect scenario where a bull bugles, you go right to 100 yards, you set up once and you call them in. Like, that's pretty rare that happens. Typically it's, you get within 100 yards and then you set up and you call again and he's moved off, and then you got to grab the decoy, move another 50 yards this way, and you're just playing cat and mouse where you're trying to manage that decoy the entire time. That I think it just better off, like, less is more in that situation, especially solo. So yeah, there was one elk, and I like 1000% in particular I killed with a buddy probably back in 2008. Maybe it was the first year back in Decoys, where we were basically hiking out and then like, I distinctly remember like hiking down a hill, and then I looked to my left and I saw a bull, and he caught movement at the same time, and I had just stepped past a pine tree. So I just stepped back, got the decoy, and he's probably at like 80 yards, got the decoy out, and then just kind of scooted the decoy out from the tree, and put it down so he could see it. And then my buddy who was behind me just kind of snuck to the left, and then that bull just came right to us. Like, not in a million years would have that happened if I had not had the decoy, right? He would have seen the movement and what the heck is that? And then would have, stared, and then boogered out of there. So yeah, I don't think it hurts at all. It's just, it almost falls in line, in my opinion, especially from if I'm backpacking mentality, to what you talked about earlier with the wipes and having like extra things you got to manage and worry about. It falls in line with that. So plenty of elk have been killed without decoys that you can certainly do it without.
Yeah.
As far as strategy goes, just calling, man, I think I still got some work to do there. We should get Boschma on. He's killed quite a few bulls solo, where he does a pretty good job, like, running around, and I think he'll call and rake something and then run up 50 yards, and I know he's killed 3 or 4 bulls solo calling them in bow season. I'd be curious to pick his brain on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in line with you, and I heard this question of just for solo in particular. For me, it would be too much to manage. There's already enough going on. I think the only exception I could see myself personally packing a decoy solo is if I knew I was going to be in a bit more of an ambush style hunting situation, or I knew I was going to be doing some setups where there's just more open country, where maybe I'm doing more of a cold call or ambush, or I'm doing something less dynamic and more of like, hey, I can use this decoy because I'm setting up here and I want to help draw something, but I'm not anticipating on using a decoy solo to be in a very dynamic, like, type of run and call type environment. So it'd just be much more, there's some more open country opportunity with more fixed or static setups, whether that's cold calling or something along those lines. Then I think it's okay, at least for me. But yeah, the idea of being in the elk woods in these dynamic situations and calling and moving in a bow and a decoy, it's just way, for me, too much complexity. Like,
Yeah.
Maybe there's somebody who can do it well. I just know, like, maybe it's my own limitation of I can't do that. Like, that's way too much going on.
Yeah. And there's those decoys that like attach to your quiver. Have you seen that? And then you like shoot through it. To me, I always like, the first thing I thought, I was like, you just attached a sail to your bow. Like, it wouldn't take but the slightest thermal to be like yanking your bow all over the place at full draw. But maybe, if it's dead calm outside, maybe they work quite well. I don't know. Because that would be obviously something that's like mobile and it's just with you the whole time. But at the same time, it's like you'd want to put that decoy like off to the side or behind you and be a distraction. But I don't know, maybe it works.
All right, guys. Well, we talked solo elk, we talked poop, we talked, old packs and DWR, lots of good stuff. Thanks as always for sending in the questions and for the variety of questions. It would be fun, even like maybe mid-season, to get some questions from you guys, like stuff we could kind of talk about in real time, or, as we get into obviously September and archery season. If you guys are looking ahead to some rifle hunts or just have different contexts or scenarios you want to hear about, feel free to reach out, send us your questions to podcast@exomountaingear.com. Or if you want to leave an audio message, like some of those questions you heard today, just look for the link in the show description. that says leave a message, and you can do that from whatever device you're on. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so that you receive future episodes automatically. Best of luck on your upcoming hunts. Enjoy it, and we'll talk to you soon.